All right. Today we're going to be starting with CSS, and uh, as you can see on the screen, we have introduction to CSS. So we're starting with the introduction, not that we're going into the advanced part of the CSS, because everything you want to do, you need to start from the basic before you jump into the advanced part of it. And as you can see here, the full meaning of CSS is just as cascade style sheets. The style sheets is what you'll be doing most of the time, which are the style that you want to apply to your element. While the cascade, you can think of it as a judge that comes in to check where you have a different style that you want to apply on one element from different places. So, and like for example, now you want to change the background of one element. So one person is saying I want the colors to be red, another person is saying I want the colors to be blue. So who is going to take over? Which color are we going to use, or which background are we going to use? That's what the cascade is there for. It's like a judge that check anywhere you have the clashes in your style. You check which one have the priority or which one have the highest precedence there to take over or to apply their style. But for now, we'll be dealing with the style sheets there. But later on, we'll be talking about cascade because it's very important. Because when you apply some style and the thing is not working at all, so it's because of what is going on behind the scene based on these cascade rules. There's some set of rules that it follow to apply your style when you have a clash in the styling that you want to apply to the elements on the page. But before I get to how to include CSS on the page, I want to talk about grouping in HTML, which is something I briefly explained last time because it's very important. When you are doing your design later on, most of the elements that you want to work with, you are going to see that they are in groups, not that they are going on their own. Like some of the elements, you have to combine them together to form your own custom design there. And in order for you to be able to do that, you need to know how to group different elements together. You already know how to group your li by using ol, or you use your ul. Again, you can group some of these form control inside the form element. But what if you have a p tag, you have a form, but you want to group them? We need to have another element that we can use to group all of them together. Looking at this page here now, as you can see, here there are grouping going on here. So if you look at it, all these texts, they are placed by the left hand side. But it's not just one item that is here. There are different items, like the heading text that you know about. We have the paragraph. Then you have all this one. So this is a group on their own, because if you look at it, it's not just one item that is one image. Yeah, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they are going side by side, and it's not affecting any other contents that you have beside them. Again, too, this is another element there, but all of them, they are grouped as if they are one element. So you need to be able to do all this thing later on with the help of CSS, that you can group your element. Again, too, whatever that is happening here is not really affecting what is going on there, because this one too, it's inside its own group, and that's the same thing that is going on at this side. So all this one here, they are in their own group, but inside that place too, you are going to see that we have some other groups that is there. Again, this is one, and this is another one, and with the help of CSS, you can talk to this group to be by the left and the other one to be by the right, and everything that is inside that group will follow as well, because they are part of that group. So once you move the group, everything inside will follow, not that you have to be moving them one by one. So in order for you to be able to group some of your elements together like this, you need to know about grouping tags. So we have a lot of them that you can use, most especially these are div here, which is division. So we use it to create a division, and it has been derived from HTML1 all the way to the current HTML that we have. But with the recent version of HTML, there have been like some other one are being added, like section, which is what you can use to create different section on your page. They are not really giving you any style. You'll be the one that will use CSS to, style them the way you want it to look like. And again, too, not that this header now, if you use it anywhere, it will not go up. No, you have to use it at the correct place. But we use it to group any area that are meant for the header part of a particular section or of a particular page. So you can use these header tags to group all these elements together. For example, when I look at this, my code, I have this div, which is the first one that I have on the list. But inside that div, as you can see, we have this H1 and we have this paragraph here. So this is one group on its own. And whatever we'll be doing with this group later on will not affect any other content outside of that group. And later on too, I can talk to CSS that I only want to style the H1 that is inside this particular group, not any other H1 on the page. Once we get to this part, you know about this one. Once we go to this selector, we'll be talking about that one. But for now, you can use your div, section, header, nav, footer, and a lot of them that you'll be seeing later on to group different elements on the page together. And based on that group, you can style them the way you want. And whatever you are doing in that group, there is no way it will be affecting another group there. But if you see some of them, they actually have the same pattern of layout, but that's a little different. Like this one, has the background is different. Like that, the color of this one is this light green, while this one is the light orange there. But you see, it has its own image. This one to have its own image, and again, it has title. Is the same kind of a title here. The subtitle is the same kind of a subtitle here, but they are in a different group. And as you can see, this one is bigger than this one. So whatever I want to do now, I just need to group them, and inside that group now, I can talk to it to behave anyhow I want it. And you see that other element will be inside. So inspecting this one now, you always see div a lot on every site like that, because that's what you can use to achieve grouping of different elements. And based on that, your group, or based on whatever you want to do on the page, you group them, then you apply the CSS on it. And whatever CSS you are doing on this group, there is no way to be affecting another group if you are starting with that. But you can actually do it in a way that whatever you apply, it will still apply it on particular element. But it can still change it. Just like you can see, all of them, they have the same round edge like that. They have the same title. They have the same the subtext that is there. They have the same image, but there's some little difference there. So you can style them in general by applying one style on them. Then all those little changes, you now focus on that particular group, and there's no way to be affecting the other one. And as you can see, everything here too, as you can see, it looks like in a container there. So we can use header to group everything like this together, which is like the top part of the site. As you can see that they have header there, but inside the header, as you can see, there's still subgroup, and that's what you'll be doing, or that's what we are going to be doing later on. So most of the thing we'll do is that all our elements that we've known about, we'll be grouping them, and we style them according to the way we want the stuff to look like there. But we have some grouping element that you can use, like the header, which is normally used at the top of a site or at the top of a particular section that you are working on a page. For example, here now, if you look at it, this is one section, which we normally call the hero section. Apart from that, as you can see, this is another section talking about something else entirely. So if you scroll down, as you can see, this is another section on its own, and this is another section. But this type of section here, we normally use footer to group them together, because it's kind of like the bottom part of the site. So we normally use the footer to do the grouping. But if it's not header or footer there, you can use section, or you can use the div. Even all this one that header, you can use div, because div is, this has been there right from day one. It's HTML5 that introduced all these new tag that you can use to represent different sections of the area, and we call them semantic tag. But we are going to be using them together. Majorly, I'll be using this div a lot, because you can use it anywhere on the page to group different things together there like that. So what do we need to do? I've already created this in down here, but later on, when we are doing some stuff, I'll be bringing all the other one in like that. I've not explained this nav. Normally, nav is what we use to group the navigation links of the sites together. For example, like all this one now, this is navigation links on our page. So you can use nav to group them together. It's not a must, but those are different HTML grouping elements that you can use. So if you want, you can use it. If you don't want, as you can see, you can use the div, but it's not showing because the screen is not up to what we want. Let me expand it so that it can come outside. And as you can see, let me expand this group. And inside the group here, they are just using them directly. But if I want to do it, I can use nav to group all this one together. It all depends on the site that you're building. If you like, you can use it. If you don't want, you just use your other grouping element. But each one of them, we have where we use to use them. Not that you just be using them anyhow. But div, you can use it anywhere you want, because that one is like a general division. So you can use it to divide different area of your site, and you use it to group whatever content that is there together. And that's the reason why in my code right now I'm using div. But if I want, I can use section, I can use header, I can use footer. Not that they will do anything for you, they are just there to group. So they don't give you any style. As you can see, that's when you know that this thing they are in a group. But by the time I started applying CSS on them, that's when you know that they're actually in their own self-contained group. So this one here, they are not the same thing as this. Even though I'm using the same element, but they are different groups. So the first one is this, which is inside its own group, while the second one is this, which is inside its own group. And once I start applying style on this, there's only to be appearing on this one if I'm only focusing on this particular one. Or if I'm only focusing on this one too, there's no way it will be affecting the one I have done there. And that's where we need to know how to include CSS on our page. Because when you want to apply the CSS now, you need to know which method to use. And we have 3 methods that you can use here. We have the inline, we have this internal or embedded. So even this inline too is still internal because you'll be doing it inside HTML. So internal means that you are doing it directly inside HTML. Why the external means you are moving it into its own file, into its own CSS file, then you now connect it to the page. But how do you do it? So we are going to be starting with this inline first. Then from there, we move to this embedded there like that. And from there, we move to the external. And after that, I will always use external because it's always good that you separate the HTML from CSS. You can put them together, but there's a lot of things you are going to be typing in your CSS. So put it inside the HTML. As you can see, we have a lot of stuff already inside HTML with just this simple stuff. Now imagine the page you are going to be building later on. You are going to have a lot of HTML. Now combining CSS again to it, you will have a lot of things to be. If you need to change something, you have to be moving up and down. But it would be nice if you have them in their own separate file. Any one of them you want to work with, you just focus on that particular one. But nobody is stopping you from putting them together in one file. It's just that when you're working on a large stuff, it will be too tedious to kind of work with there like that. So what we need to do now is to start with this inline CSS there. And what is inline CSS? This one is the simplest among them. What that means is that you are applying this attribute style on your element and you're applying whatever CSS you want on that particular element. That's why it is inline. It is only for the element that you are working on. So this one now is only going to affect this H1 and anything that is inside it, not any other H1 save on this screen again. It's only this H1 that is going to focus on, not any other element or any other H1 on the page. So if you want all the H1 that I have on this page now to have the same style, you have to go inside each one of them one by one, apply this attribute style, then change whatever you want to do there. For example, here I'm applying color of red. I will explain that pattern once we get to this internal or embedded soon. But this is what I'm doing here. As you can see, the color has changed. But it's always changing it for this H1. As you can see, that is not affecting the second H1. It will not affect the third H1 and so forth like that. So it doesn't affect any other element on the page except that particular one that you are working on. So if you want this style too to be on another H1 on the page, what you have to do is to copy it, or you go to that place and do the same thing. And as you can see that this thing is not good like that, because now imagine I have like 20 H1 on the page. Am I going to be going inside each one of them one by one? No. So that's where this internal and this external comes in. So we can use embedded, or you can use this external method to kind of style your element at once, not that you'll be styling them one by one using the inline method. So this is what we call inline CSS. To quickly apply CSS on your element, just give it that attribute style and you apply whatever style you want to change on that element. But what am I typing inside this code here? I will explain it better once I get into this CSS rule set. Because here you're actually giving CSS a rules to follow, which are the rule here is that to change the color of this element to this particular value there like that. So we call this same property and we call this one value. So you are changing this particular property on this element and you are changing it into this particular value there. So the color property, I'm changing it to red. By default, the browser will apply black as the color to all your text, but you can change that property color to another value or another valid color that you want to use. And VS Code have a lot of tools that you can use to quickly change the color, or you are even going to see the color once you mention the name, or you can even use VS Code tools to just pick a color. As you can see, color can be defined in different ways. But all this way, once we get to the part we need it, I think after this unit, I'll be talking about colors, different ways of representing color, because you need to know different ways. So it's not just you mention the name of color alone. You can represent it in different ways. So going back up, as you can see, this one will be this color, while this one will still maintain its own red. So, and this is one of the disadvantage of inline. So if I want to change this one too, I have to do copy and paste or come here to update the stuff. But I don't want to be doing it like that. I want to be able to change my H1 style or at once, without me going inside each one of them to apply the style. And that's where this embedded comes in, because we don't want to go external yet, but we need to talk about the embedded. And when you want to deal with the embedded, instead of using the attribute style, what you now be doing is to have element style. So now what we are going to have is now the style element. So this is what we call embedded CSS. The one we have here is what we call the inline CSS, while the one we have here is what we call embedded. And as you can see, I'm putting it inside the edge tag. So you can actually put it anywhere on a page. But by convention, we normally put the style inside here so that you see all the style before seeing the element, or you can place it anywhere inside it, anywhere here. But we don't do that. We normally put it at the top here. Then inside this element, that's where you now be talking to each one of the element, and at the same time, you apply the style you want. When you are dealing with inline, the style is already on that element. So it knows about the element you want to style. But now it's standing alone. So it doesn't know anything about this H1, or it doesn't know anything about this paragraph. It doesn't know anything about your airline. So you have to be the one that will talk to it that go to this element, then apply this so style. And that's where this rule set comes in there. So rule set is what you use to talk to your element and how to change the style on the element. So we use rule set to talk to CSS on how and where to apply the style. So you want to change something on your element. So where do you want to apply it? You need to talk to CSS there. And again, what are the stuff that you want to change? Those are the rules that you are going to supply. But how do you do it? So how do you do your rule set? So rule set is a combination of what we call selector. Now I mentioned where. So that's what you'll be using. So you are going to use it to select which element you want to style. Then inside this place, you are going to have something known as declarations, which are the stuff that you want to change on that element. So when you are dealing with the external or the embedded, because they use the same thing, the difference is that one is outside of HTML, one is inside of HTML. So whatever you are doing inside this embedded is still what you'll be doing inside the external CSS. Just that one is its own separate file. So here, what you always be doing is just rule sets. So we have something known as a rule set, and let me bring it out. I think the PDF sent to you, you are actually going to see it once I send the PDF there. But we have the, let me go online. So CSS rule set like that. So this is a combination of the element you want to style and where it's going, or whatever property you want to change on that element. So this is what we call rule set. So rule set, as you can see here, you are going to have selector. Then inside the curly brace, you are going to have all the properties that you want to apply on that element. So everything combined together is what we now call rule set, because you are giving a rule on where and what to apply. This is where I want you to change the color to red. This is where I want to change the background to blue. This is where I want my text to be, big and center on the page, and so forth like that. So this is what you will be using. For example, here now, what I can do here is H1 like this. So now my selector is that, what's wrong with the keyboard? Is that H1. So that H1 there now is the selector. Then here I have color to be orange like this. So everything combined together here is what we call rule set. So you are giving a rule where to apply the stuff, that's selector. What are the stuff are you applying there? That's the declaration. But when you're talking about the declaration, as you can see, what I mentioned before, we have the property that you want to change on that element, then you have the value. And each one of the property have the way you pass the value, which we are going to be talking about later on. That's why you see that after some time, we're going to be talking about CSS unit. Because some value you want to use, they requires unit, while some of them doesn't require unit. And that's the reason we have down here different properties that you can use, where to use them, and how to use them. But first, you need to know about how to include CSS on the page, and at the same time too, what are the selectors? What are different ways of selecting elements on the page? When you are dealing with your embedded or external, which is what you'll be using a lot, you need to know about selector. Then when we are done with the selector, we move to declaration. And that declaration here is what I call these properties. So which is what the property you can change on a particular element, or what are the common property that we need before we start joining everything together there. But first, when you're dealing with this embedded or external, which is what you always work with a lot, because you won't be working with inline like that. It's not that practical for working with a large stuff, because you have to be talking to them one by one. But we don't want to be talking to them one by one because of this selector here. Because selector, you can use it to talk to different elements at once. Not that it's just be selecting the first one. Even if you want, you can tell it that, okay, select only the first and the second, or select the last two that you can find on the page, or select the third one, or only select the first one that is inside another element, and so forth like that. And that's what we'll be talking about once we get to this selector there. What are different selectors you can use? But for now, the rule set is just the combination of a selector and whatever properties that you want to change on that element that the selector will be. What selector will be doing is go to the page inside the body, then target the element that matches that selector. Then once CSS sees the element, then it will apply whatever you put inside the curly brace earlier. But what we have here is a rule set. And again, last time I talked about how to create comments in HTML, which as you can see that I'm using it here, because I don't want this thing to appear on the screen there. So that's why I'm commenting it out and having a separate one without the inline CSS. The same way too, we can create comments in CSS. So whatever you are doing inside this style is all about CSS, not HTML again. When you're outside of it, you are dealing with HTML. But once you enter this style, in between this one and this, you are dealing with CSS. So the way you create comments here now, that's not the same way you are going to create comment inside this place. So you have to use the CSS way of creating a comment. And for the CSS, it started with this slash, followed by this asterisk, as you can see now, that's converted everything to comment. So this is a CSS comment here. But you have to close it, just like the way we are closing and opening the HTML. So this is how to close the HTML comment, and this is how to open the HTML comment. So for CSS, this is how to open it, and to close it, just reverse the stuff like this. So now we've closed the comment, and that's what I'll be using here for all this one, because this one is just my own text. It's not a valid CSS stuff. It's just to explain what you are going to be doing there like that. And as you can see, it started from this line and it ends on this line. Because with VS Code, just go to any element you want to comment out, you just hold the control then slash, it will do it for you automatically for everything on that line or for everything that you select there. So if you select from here now to here, it means you want to create a comment for only that side. So control then slash, it will only create it for that particular part, because then every time you have to type it yourself, it's already in VS Code. You understand what you are doing there like that, and it knows that you are inside CSS or you are inside HTML. So if I enter this side now and use the same thing like this, as you can see, it's creating the CSS on, not the HTML comment. So VS Code recognize the style and the normal HTML code that you can use on the page. But what you always be doing is a rule set, and which is the combination of selector and all the properties or declaration you want. You get to here now, the P like that. And what am I doing? So the color is going to be, let me just use green. So what I'm doing here is that I'm applying the style to all these elements by using the selector. We have different methods of selecting your element on the page, but for now I'm just using this simple one, and I'm going to explain what is this, what's that selector, or how you are going to translate it, because you must know how to translate the selector. Because if you don't know how to translate selector, that's when you'll be able to target your element on the page the way you want. For example, here now I want to select p tag that is inside div, or I want to select the h2 that is inside form. So there's selector for all these things. Even though it's English, but you can translate it to a selector that is going to do something like that for you on the page. But what I'm doing here is that I'm just selecting all the h1 on the screen. So anywhere that is h1 on the screen is going to change the color to orange. And for this one, anywhere that is p on the screen is going to change it to green. It doesn't care whether it is inside div, or it is standing alone, or it is inside a form, or anywhere, as long as it can find it inside body, it's going to style it. But that's not what you want every time. You only want to focus on a particular one, and that's where all these selectors that we're going to be talking about later on. Because we have, as you can see, we have the element selector, which is what I'm using right now. I'm selecting based on the element or the tag name. But you can select based on class, you can select based on the ID that you have on that element. You know, you can give your element ID. So based on that ID, you can style it. You just say, look for any element that have this ID, then apply this so stuff on it. Because not every time you have to be using their name. That sometimes you want to style them based on another stuff. Again, you can style them based on the attributes that that element have there. So if that element have a particular attribute, you can target it based on that attribute. And what I mean by target is, you can say target or select. I'm talking about the same thing. So now let me save the code, and on the page now you see that all, can you see now, all our h1 will now change to the color that we have here. I don't need to start going inside each one of them one by one to change it. From this embedded now, it can go to all of them based on the rule that you specify here, or how to select what you are looking for. But if I want, I can actually say that I only need so this one I will be talking about them later on like that. Can you see now that he's not talking about everything again? He's now only focusing on the first one. But look at it here too. Can you see that it's still working here? Why? Because this is a group on its own. This is another group. But again too, you know, this one it worked for this one, it did not work for this, because they are in a group of body. No, don't forget, body too is a group on its own. So it will see this h1 as the first one inside body. The same thing here too, as you can see, this one now is on in another group, it's still body group, so it's not the first one, so it will be seeing this one as first. But when you get there, this is another group entirely. So since it's another group, it means the p that we have, or the h1 that we have here, that's the first one in that group. But I'll be talking about them once we get to other selector. But with this selector here, you can use it to target different elements that you want on the page like that. Or if I want, I can just say last of type. So the last of h2, can you see that it's not selecting this one again? So if you scroll down to the last one that we have, this is the last, or no, this is the last one we have there like that. Then if you scroll down, you see that it's still selecting this one because you are the first, and you see the last inside that parent because it's one. So you are the first, and you still does like the firstborn, and at the same time it's still the lastborn because you are the only one. So that's what is going on. So that's the reason you need to understand selector, because it is very important. Because if this thing is not done properly, then nothing will happen on the page. For example, if I use H5, do we have H5 on the page? It will look for H5. So if you cannot find that H5 on the page, as you can see, nothing will happen. It's very important that you do your selector very well before the property will work. And that's why we need the selector first before moving into property. Because if you are applying property and you are not selecting the element correctly, you say that nothing will work. This is valid, but we cannot find that element on the page. So nothing will happen. Even if you use a valid selector, if that selector is not matching anything inside body, nothing will happen. Whatever you are doing here must match something inside the body. If it's not matching anything, it will just keep whatever you put in the curly brace. It will firstly check whether that element is on the screen. If it is there, style it. Then if it's not there, then don't do anything. So this, our style now is useless because the element we are targeting is not on the page. So you can use inline CSS to apply your style, or you can use this embedded CSS. And how do you do it? Just create the style element. Then inside the style element, you start applying the rule set. So here we have two rules here. The first rule for selecting H5 and what to apply there. The second rules for selecting the paragraph and what to do on that paragraph. And I can apply different properties on it that you are going to be seeing later on there like that. And when you're applying this stuff, as you can see the pattern, you have the property followed by the column, then followed by the value. And after each one of them, you are going to have this semicolon. But that's how CSS we know that that's one declaration. So this CSS doesn't care about that we are moving it to different line. If you want, you can move it to the same line. It will still work. But because I have a prettier install, it's actually moving them. But to the browser, it doesn't care. How it's going to know is based on this semicolon here. So once it sees semicolon, it knows that one part is done. Then again, it will translate another one. Okay, this is another semicolon, that's another declaration, and so forth like that. You can have multiple declarations there. And for reading sake, we normally put each one of them on a separate line because you are going to have a lot of declaration later on like that. As you can see, you can actually see what is going on in the browser, what are each one of these things, what they are doing, or the style they are applying. I'm going to show you later on how to open this thing so that you can see what the browser is applying behind the scene. As you can see here, so can you see on the container, they are applying all these properties. What are these properties doing? Once you get there, you are going to know about them. They are not something that is like that. It's something that we're going to talk about once we get to the property. As you can see, they are here: the width, the border, and the margin, and the padding. So once we take care of this part, everything they are doing here, you know what is doing with this padding left or padding right like that, because it's something you need to know about. And again, too, this one too, you're going to know about the data, which is what we call custom property or variables. I think I actually had it here. Did I have it here? Let me scroll up because I don't want to miss any of those. Okay, I did not actually add it, but I will be adding it later on because it's very important. Something you are going to be using when you're dealing with advanced stuff. But for basic, you might not need it, but it's good that you have that experience with the custom or variables like that. So yeah, we've talked about the inline, embedded, but now we need to talk about the external, which is another way of you creating CSS. So this is another way of you creating CSS. I want to comment everything out. So that's why I removed that one, because you can't put one comment inside another comment. So that's why I have to remove that one, so that it can just comment everything. But now I see that it's using HTML because it is outside, not inside the tag. If it is inside, what you'll be using is CSS on. But if it is outside, what you'll be using is a HTML tag. But now we don't even want to put our CSS inside HTML file. We want to have it in its own separate file. So to have it in its own separate file, what we are going to be doing is to create CSS file. So you can have it in your project, or it's something that it's coming from online. Not just like the way we are connected to image or video, you can actually connect to any CSS online too. But now, right now, we want to connect to the one that is inside our project. But you can connect to the one that is coming from online. But majorly, you always be creating your CSS yourself because you don't want to be using someone else's style. It means once you change something there, you have to update your stuff to match what is going on. But instead of you doing that, what you can do is to create your own local CSS file. And just like the HTML file, you name it whatever you want. Right now, I'm calling it style, which is the convention there too for major styling of your stuff. There, you see that some people use style, some people use global, some people use index, or they will even use the name of the HTML that you are working with. It all depends on what you want. But the major thing is the extension, which is this .css like that. Because that's how you are going to get autocomplete for CSS and some other goodies that you need. As you can see now, it's showing that we are dealing with CSS like that. And what are you going to be doing here? What you are going to be doing is all about rule set. You are not doing any style. We already know that everything you'll be doing here is all about CSS. So there's no need of you opening tag because everything here is just HTML. Everything here is just CSS, no HTML. What you'll be doing here is just rule set. And what is our rule set? We talked about it, which is selector. Then inside this place, you are going to have a declaration. And what is your declaration? It's just your property like this, property like this. Then you have the value. After that, semicolon. Again, if you need to change other properties, so this is going to be property 2 like that. So value 2, so property 3, then value 3, and so forth like that. But there's nothing stopping you from putting them on one line. But for reading sake, we always put them on a different line because it will be easier to read compared to you putting them on one line. The browser can read it as long as you put the correct stuff there. The browser will be able to read it, whether you join it together or not. But to us, that will be updating the code, you want to be able to read the stuff, not that just for the browser alone. And this is what you'll be doing inside this file, just like what we did before there. So we can target all our H1, then we change the color to orange or whatever colors you want. So the color is going to be orange head. That's one of the declaration. Another one is I want the background. So the background, the back and ground like this on the stuff to be yellow like this. So save, and you see that nothing is happening. Why? Because the two files don't know about each other. It's just like you have your file here, like all these images. The HTML will not just use them directly. You need to connect them together. So just like the way we are connecting these images there by using the ing tag, so here too we have a tag that we can use to connect our CSS to the HTML. So we normally do that one too inside the head. And to include this thing, we have a tag known as a link. And as you can see, you can use it to include different stuff on your page. That's what you see that all this side they are using to show this their icon in the search or in this header section here of the browser. You can see that our own is just, it doesn't know about the icon we want to use. That's why it's using their default, or this browser default icon. But if you look at other side, as you can see, they have their logo there showing. But everything that we have been working on, they don't kind of come out like that. It just show this globe icon. So that's what the browser is using, or this is my browser that I'm using right now is using. Depending on the browser you are using there, they come with their own different default we call it wave icon there like that. So it's known as this wave icon, as you can see. So this is the link. Once you use this one, you just pass the image you want to use at that place, and that's what it will be displaying for this side. But we are not using it to display wave icon. What we want to use it is for CSS. So once you click on it, or once you click on link directly, by default it will think it's CSS you want to do. So once you press enter, as you can see, it's going to generate a link that is meant for CSS. Don't forget what we have to cascade style sheet. So the rel, what is the relationship of this link to this href here? So we are talking to it that it's going to be all about CSS, which is style sheet styling there. But yeah, we can just use that favor icon that I talked about. So if I go down now using the link like that and use that favor icon, as you can see that the rel is different. So now, based on this, it knows what browser knows what to do based on whatever you are passing to href. See the same href, but how is it going to interpret what is coming from href? Is depending on this rel here. So rel talks to the browser where to use whatever that is coming from href. So once you use style sheet, it knows that whatever that is coming from here is all about CSS. It will interpret them as CSS. But if it is this shortcut icon here, it knows that it's supposed to display it at this place. So it will think whatever you have here is all about image that you want to display at that place. But if we're not displaying any image right now, what we just want to display or what we just want to do is our CSS. So what we just need to do is to link them, and you know that they are inside the same folder, which is something that we've talked about. So when you are dealing with linking, if the two files are inside the same folder, what you just need to do just to mention the name of the file, which is going to be style, then CSS like that. So what this one will do is that it will look for this file inside the same HTML file that we are working with. So this HTML now is located, as you can see, is located inside CSS. So it will, this file now, it will append the remaining link that was showing on this HTML as part of this one. We don't need to put everything. Once they are inside the same folder, just use the name. The browser will figure out the remaining stuff. And once I save it now, as you can see, it knows that it will go to that file and it will pick whatever that is there. But if I put something that is wrong here, maybe for example, I'm using style 1 and save like that, you can see, it will look for style 1 here. But there's nothing like style 1, so nothing to load. But because we can find the file inside that same place, the browser knows what to do by taking all the CSS from that file, then use it on this page directly. So now, this same style now, you can use it on different websites, or you can use it on different page that we are working on here. So this same CSS, if I want to use it on my form or the index here, I can still use it. What I just need to do is to come inside the head and then link them together. This is the advantage of external. We can use it for different pages. So here now I just need to do the link, but now you know they are not inside the same folder. So I can't use the method that I used before. So the method I have to use here is a combination of a parent and the child there, which is something I have not talked about, but I'll come back into it later on. Look at what I just did. I used // because the folder that I want to reference is not inside HTML. It is outside of HTML. So I need to go outside of HTML so that I can have access to that folder. And to go outside of a particular folder, we use // So it, as you can see now, it's not showing everything that is outside of HTML. So if I still want to go outside of this place too, I just need to continue using that. You can see that it's now outside of this our class 6. So if I still want to leave the one that is holding everything too, then // and it will keep going back. It's just as if you are pressing this backspace on your this thing. So it will keep going back to the previous offer. But how do you do it in the code? This is how we do it. So // means you are leaving current folder to the previous one. So how do you guess the current one and the previous? You can actually see them here in your code too. So this is the file we are working on, but it is inside this particular folder HTML. But look at it too. That HTML is inside classes. So if I want to leave that HTML now and enter classes, what I will just do is to press .. then /. As you can see now, it's now showing everything that is inside classes. So right now I'm inside this classes where this HTML is coming from. So if I want to enter any one of them, I just need to mention the name of the folder before mentioning the name of the file. So what I did here is what we call child linking here. So when you want to enter a folder, or when you have a file that is inside another folder, so and you need to enter that folder first before you get to that file, what you have to do is to mention the folder before you get to the file. So what I'm doing here, for example now, let me do it with this simple one. You can see that here we have overview and we are inside HTML. So I want to link from this index now to what is inside dashboard. Now currently we are inside HTML folder, but before you can have access to overview, you must enter the dash. So that's where the child folder comes in. So you need to enter that folder before you see the file. So if I want to link to that one now, what I have to do here is to use my A tag then mention the name of the folder first, because that folder, as you can see, the folder, then followed by slash. So that's how you open a folder. When you need to enter a folder before you see the file, you mention the name of the folder, then followed by slash. And the VS Code, as you can see, it will now give you access to what is inside that place. But if you use something that is wrong, VS Code will not give you suggestion. For example, here, if I mention a folder that we don't have, for example, like dash, you can see nothing is coming out because we don't have anything like that inside HTML. It's still talking about the current folder we are working on. Current folder is whatever the file where it's coming from. So here, this is the file we are working on. So where is it coming from? It's coming from HTML. But there is something inside that particular HTML, not outside of it. You can see the dash is still inside HTML. So if you want to have access to something that is here, you have to mention that folder first before mentioning the name of the file. Again, too, when you want to have access to something that is, the one we talk about now is when you want to enter. But what if you want to go outside of the one you are working on? That's where the dot dot slash comes in. When you are leaving a folder, dot dot slash. When you are entering a folder, the name of the folder slash. When you are leaving a folder, dot dot slash. When you are entering a folder, the name of the folder, then slash. So that's how it works. And yeah, that's what we are now using here. We are combining the two of them together because of the way the links are there. We need to leave HTML so that we can have access to CSS. And in order for you to have access to what is inside CSS, you need to enter it. So first, and what we did is leave the HTML, then we have access to classes. Then from classes, we enter CSS. And once you enter CSS, then you now have access to that CSS file. So saving this now and removing everything that is here, because now as you can see it's pointing to CSS. So removing everything, press enter and go inside our HTML. Can you see it's still applying that style? I did not need to do anything with all my H1 here. The same styling that I'm using here, it's using it there. And if I make changes to what is going on here, for example, I don't want the colors to be, the background to be this again. I want it to be blue. Once I save it, it will change here because they are using the same CSS. And again, if I go back to that place, the former one that we have are like that. So press enter, as you can see, it's still the same. So with the external one, you can have one style and you reuse it in different pages, because most of your sites, you always see that they are using the same thing, not that they are changing. Even if there is going to be a change, it's just the text or the content that is changing, but you are still using the same tag and you still want the same styling. This is their own page. Now we can go to about, and once we go to the about, you see that the way we have some of the item on this their home page, that's the same way it's displaying on their about page there, like that. As you can see, the header is still the same. The difference is that they added this something else along with it, but the title, the way it is here, or the way the text is displaying here, that's the same way it is at that place. So when you want to do something like this, where you have different pages, you can reuse the same style. What you do is that instead of putting them inside one HTML file, you put it inside its own CSS, then you now reuse them like that. But that's not the only way, or that's not the only reason why you can do that. Another reason is that you want to separate your CSS from your HTML file, so that you can work on any one of them anytime you want, without being bothered by the other one or start scrolling up and down, because in your CSS there's a lot of things to be typed later on like that, because you are going to be the one that will be giving instruction that this is what you want this particular area here, and you're going to be applying a lot of properties, or you're going to be changing a lot of properties on that particular element there. So we've talked about the inline one, we've talked about the embedded, and we've talked about the external CSS like that, and they are very, very important there, depending on which one you want to use. But as from this moment on, I will always focus on this external CSS, because I want to be able to do CSS stuff without talking about HTML. Even if I need HTML, I'll just go there briefly, then when I'm done, come back into the file and continue with what I want to do there like that. So that's what all about how to include uh, CSS on a page. Because when you have your HTML, the next thing is to include your CSS. Then from there, you start applying the properties. But before you start applying properties, there you know the rule set now is a combination of selector and the changes you want, or the properties or the declaration are there like that. And this selector is very important, just like the way just like what I mentioned before there, like that. So it's very important, because without this, there's no way this one will know where to apply the style that you want on the page. So you need to talk to it where to do it. But we have different methods that you can use too for selectors, because your element on the page can be complex depending on how you wire them together. And based on the way you couple them together, you can use some of these selectors here to target elements that you want on the page. Just like what I mentioned before, I only want to select the H1 that is inside this particular group, or I only want to select the H1 that is inside form, and so forth like that. So you need selector to be able to talk to CSS on how or where to find that element on the page. And yeah, we're going to be starting with the basic one, which I'm going to talk about only this one for now. This element, the class, and the ID. Let me check the time. Well, yeah, the time is up. So what I will just do is to talk about this one, then I'll be talking about this other one tomorrow, like that. But let me talk about the element, which is something I've been using since. So element, or the type selector, allows you to select element based on its type, based on the tag that you have in your HTML. So based on the tags that you have in the HTML here, you can target them in your CSS selector. So for example now, what if I want to select all the li on the page? I just need to target it with that element selector. So here we are selecting the li element, or the tag. You know, I told you before, tag or element, they are doing the same. It's just that there's a technical stuff around them. Element is what you are seeing on the page, but what you are using to generate it is a tag. But you can actually use the two words to refer to the same thing there. So here now, what I'm doing here is that I'm selecting all the elements that are generated by li on the screen. And that's why I'm calling it this element selector. This one allows you to select based on the element tag name that you're using to generate them. So here, what do I want to do? The content that I have on the page, which is the li, I want the color now. So the color now to be red. So this one now, it will only focus on li. But it doesn't care whether the li is coming from ul or it's coming from ol. It will just look for anywhere you have li. So it doesn't care whether it is, as you can see here, where is it safe? There is one side here. As you can see, it doesn't care whether you are using ul or you are using ol. It will select all the li. But at some time, you don't want the one with ul. You only want the one from ol, or you don't want the one from ol, you want to select the one inside ul. We are going to be talking about all those selector later on when we start getting into child selector. So, but for now, we are dealing with the element. So with the element, once you mention them, it's selecting all of them. It's not selecting only the first one, or the second one, or the third one. It will select all of them that you have on the page. Anywhere it can find it on the page, no matter whether it is in a particular group or not, it will pick all of them for that particular element alone. That's why we call it the element selector. This one will only select that particular element. And as you can see, it's only focusing on the li. Or if I use H2, this one now, it will only go to the page and style only the H2 that you have on the page. All the H2, not the first one, not the second one. All of them, you to pick them. But that's not what you want to do every time. You might want to select H2 that is inside form, not the one that is inside div. Or you want to select the one that is inside div, not the one that is inside form, because you want to give them different styling. Just like this page, there, you see that this box here is the weight is quite different from each other. So even though I use the same element to create that group, but I only want this one to have a particular style. You can see that they have the same style on small screen. But now when you get to a bigger screen, see that the styling is not the same. And again, too, it's kind of like, you can see they are changing, like it's kind of a change. Here is the second one that is small, but here is the first one. So you can, we have different selector you can use to target them like that. I can target all these. So for the first one, I can target the second one. For this one, I can target the first one that is there. Even though they are being created in the same way, but I want the color that is here, the background here, to be different from this one. So I can target this one without talking to this group here, even though I created them the same way. Just like this one that we have in this, our code here. The way I'm creating this div here, that's the same way I'm creating the div here. And I can target that group from my CSS now. What I just need to do is to mention the name of the element that I want. So instead of me using this one, I can just say the div. And as you can see, it will only pick anywhere you have div. So this is one div, this is another div, and this is another div here. So it's only focusing on that element, not any other thing. And if I want, I can just use a background color, not the text again, like that. So background and C is missing. As you can see now, it's only surrounding that group because it will only focus on what is inside that group. Again, too, so you can see there's a space here because they are groups. So this is one group, this is another group, and it will only focus on that particular element there, like that. So that's all for today. We talked about the grouping. We talked about how to include CSS on our page, which is we can use the inline method by going to the element, and there you just talk to it. So go to the element, give it the star attribute, then you start apply all those declarations that you want. But it will only do the same on this particular element, not any other one on the page. But instead of us using this method, because most of the time you want to change all of them at once, or you want to change different elements at once, because it's not a must that whatever you are doing on this element, you cannot do it on another element. But that same style you want to use on different elements, you can do it at once. Not that you have to be doing it separately. So we can use our embedded, or we can use this our external CSS. So when you want to deal with the embedded there, you are going to be creating the style element. And inside the style element, you are going to create the rule set, which is a combination of selector and the declarations that you want to apply. The same way too, you are dealing with this, your embedded is the same thing that you are going to be doing with the external. So you create your CSS file, and inside the CSS file, you create the rule sets for all the elements that you want to style. But don't forget, the HTML and the CSS file don't know about each other. You need to connect them. And how do you connect them? You are going to be using the link inside the edge there. And that's what you can use to connect to different, and you can connect to different CSS, not just that you can only connect to one. So if you need to connect to multiple CSS files, just list them on a separate line. Those are the way you can use P to generate different paragraphs on the page. Same way too, you can connect to different CSS. But for now, I'm only using one. But you can connect to different CSS files, and it's going to combine all of them together, apply it on the element. But there might be a problem with what you are doing. Like one styling or two styling might be affecting one element with different stuff. And I told you that's where Cascade comes in, which I'm going to showcase it to you tomorrow, because you know we have other way of selecting the same element. So I can select the element based on its name, which is element selector. I can select that same element based on the class. Now imagine this one is applying color red, while this one is applying color blue. Which one is he now going to use? That's where this chairman or the judge will now come in and check which one of you have the higher priority, which one of you can win there. So any one of them that now have the power, that's the one is going to apply. It will abandon the one from the one that have the lowest priority. And that's what we are going to be talking about later on, which is known as CSS specificity. because that's what is using. So if I click on this element, as you can see, we have selector specificity. So based on the number that is here, we determine which one has the power over the other one based on the selector. So later on, I can actually do something like this, and they are not the same thing. I will explain this one tomorrow. This one is 0, 1, 0, which is like 10. Why this one is 1? Because 0, 0, 1 is just 1. Why this 0, 1, 0 is the same thing as 10? You know that 10 is bigger than 1. So which means if I do something from here and I do something from here, and both of them are affecting one element, if there's any clash, the one that is coming from here will always win. So I will talk about this specificity later on, and that's what Cascade is using. It's like a judge that comes in to check or to resolve the conflict in your styling when you are applying multiple styles from different places and they are affecting one element, but they are using different value. So we are using same property but different value. So this one is using background color of red, while this one is using background color of blue. Same property, but you say you want to use red, and another say you want to use blue. Which one are we now going to follow? So Cascade will now come in and check which one of them have the higher priority, like which one of the selector have the highest specificity. So the one that have the highest specificity will win first. But what if both of them now have the same specificity? For example, here too, what if I just have dot p? You see that specificity here is the same thing as this one. Another rules again, which one now come last? Which one did you arrange last? So there are different rules that it follow based on what is going on in your CSS, because that thing is very important. If not, when you're applying different style in different places and you are not getting, or the thing is not putting what you are expecting on the page, knows that something is wrong with your selector, or the way you are selecting them, one of them have higher priority over the other one, and one that has the higher priority is not the one that you want. So you have to make sure that the one you want is overriding the other one, and that's where we have different selector, because you can actually target one element based on different selector, and the selector you have there can actually create different specificity based on what is going on. If I want that one at the top now to always have a bigger specificity, as you can see now, this one is now 20. So which whatever I do here, even whether it is up here or it is down here, it will always win, because specificity first. But if specificity are the same, that's when it now use the rules of which one come first or last. But it will use the last one or not the first one. But if it is specificity is high, no matter the way you arrange them, the one that has the highest specificity, you always win. So, but for now, I won't be focusing on that. We are going to be talking about other selector first. And when we started designing and we started using some stuff, you see the advantage of all these things. So that's going to be all. Let me stop.